Good to see everybody again. My name is Ken Benson from P1 Media Group, making radio better around the world. And joining us from Stuttgart, Germany today, the home of Benztown, a global leader in imaging and production. Welcome the CEO of the Big Cheese, Andy Sanneman.
Thanks, Ken. Welcome, guys. So thanks for joining us for today's webinar. Join the conversation, the incredible Null Radio success story. So today, first time we have not one, we got two guests joining the conversation and share a very interesting success story that I think just a few outside of Canada really know. So we're really very excited, and I think Ken, go ahead.
Well, let's begin by telling you about our guest today. The first one began as a DJ at a top 40 radio station, CKDA in Victoria, British Columbia. He quickly moved on to programming some of the most legendary rock stations in Canada, including stations in Winnipeg, Rock 101 in Vancouver, and The Edge in Toronto. While programming Rock 101, he also served as the national PD for Chorus Entertainment, which is one of the largest groups in Canada. He even spent time in my field, research and consulting, before joining Pattison Media as director of programming. We do need to throw this out. One of our loyal viewers, James Baker, who was a successful American programmer in LA and San Francisco. I don't know if that name rings a bell to you, Ross. He just got back after doing 10 years in radio in Saudi Arabia. But he tells me when he went to boarding school in Victoria, he used to come visit you when you were doing the night shift around 1980. If that rings a bell, but
yeah, I think him and he came by, and then this other guy came by one time, broke into the station. I turned around, and it was Brian Adams trying to get me to promote his gig down the street.
Wow!
But welcome, James.
Very cool. Very cool.
Let's go ahead, guys, and please welcome our second guest. He has been programming radio in Canada for 37 plus years. And his last creation, I think, will be his legacy. So he was the launch program director for 102.3 Now Radio Edmonton, and not only create something new and different. Now Radio has been the #1 radio station at Edmonton nearly every quarter since its launch in 2010. It has also been the #1 billing stations ever since. So I think that's an interesting thing we're going to talk later about too as well. After serving
when you said legacy, I immediately think I passed away, and this is like an in memoriam. So I'm still healthy, I'm still alive, and I'm very happy to be here. And I'm excited to talk about this. So I'll go back to you, Ken.
Well, so many years at #1, that's just absolutely incredible. And I think we all need to take a bow to you, because I think every PD would dream of that kind of success. And we're really eager to hear about the story this morning.
Absolutely. Let's just dive into it, guys. So, Mark, you were the first program director of 102.3 Now. So what is Now Radio exactly, for the people who don't know it, and how did it happen?
Okay. I was moved to Edmonton. We had a brand new signal, 102.3, and there was 18 radio stations competing in that market. So there was not an open musical format. And I had a really competitive owner previous to my owner now, but he was super competitive and wanted to win. And he gave us some money and said, okay, let's go get this. So we had a team of people. Arnie Selsey, who maybe some people do know or not, may he rest in peace, but he was pivotal, and so was some of the other people. And I mean, I sat in boardrooms for 8 months building this radio station, and so we did that for quite a while, finding the people. But getting back to the format itself, we said, okay, so how are we going to stick out? How are we going to be different than anybody else? And how are we going to be? Our goal was top 5 within 2 years. So musically, we came up with a hot AC format, which is typical. But in Canada, what we did a little bit differently is we take the American hot AC chart, the modern rock chart, the CHR chart, and blended it, and just to find out, so we could play a wide variety of music. And these were all popular songs. This is when Mumford and Sons and all these guys were just coming up on the modern rock side, and Imagine Dragons, and there's many more, obviously. And then on the Canadian side, we looked at Canadian hot AC and CHR and country, everything, just to find our Canadian music. And for people that don't know, in Canada, we have to play Radio stations have to play a minimum of 35% Canadian music. Our license was 40% Canadian music. So we actually play 41% just to make sure we're never under. It's a rule and a regulation. So it's very important. And it's challenging because in the world of Canadian music, it can be really good and then it can be really quiet for a while. So it makes it challenging. So we found the musical format and we went, okay, that's good. That should, out of 18 stations, that should put us at about number 12. I actually told them how well they were doing. They didn't have any clue that reading text on the radio was a big idea. And it was. And so in Canada, everybody was charging people to text into radio stations. And I said, okay, let's not do that. Let's not charge people to text us. Let's make it simple, and that costs us money. Honestly, we have to pay for those fees. So it's thousands of dollars a year. Make it easy for people to join the conversation. And then, I remember pitching this and I thought this would be my last day in radio. I went into the boardroom and I said, so why don't we do conversation radio? And all these people, they're looking at me going like I had horns growing on my head. And so I said, nobody's doing that here. Yeah, and nobody's doing that here. That'll be a game changer, hopefully. And after much gnashing of teeth and banging of fists on tables, they came around. And it was actually the owner and his brother who were pivotal in helping us get this going. And then the hunt began. And I didn't know what conversation radio is, but I do know why I got into radio. And I got into radio to have conversations with people, to have fun, to be engaging, but what I had to do is reverse the lens. So what that means is what radio stations do, I'm not doing that. So I'm not doing contesting. We're not doing a new radio station when your competitor's selling a commercial for $30 and we're walking in going, yeah, you know what, we need $120. So, we had to, knowing we had a really good sales team, and we figured out that if you can get one car dealer to buy, the rest of the car dealers are going to buy because they're competitive. If you can get one real estate company or home builder to buy, the rest are going to buy. And that's what it ultimately happened. And then, as ratings come along, you get big numbers and then you get your national dollars. And that's where, you make some cake. So we did this. So finding the people, if I jump ahead here, Ken, just stop me. But, building now was finding the people and then finding interesting people from interesting walks of life. And, I was lucky enough that I'd been working with my morning show previously. I'd found them about 3 years previously in a small northern Alberta town. And I moved into a small town in Saskatchewan and I worked with them there. And then they became the morning show. And their name are Crash and Mars. And they are magnificent and pivotal in the development of this radio station because they know the brand inside out and they developed it themselves a lot. And, I actually became a spectator after about 5 years because they're just amazing. And
so Mark, let me stop you. Just the original owner of the radio station, the support they gave you to chase this idea that didn't exist really. It's a little bit of these different formats blended together. It's conversation. We're going to steal a little bit from the BBC. We're actually going to let people text in. And I think, I can go on too, because, I know so much about the radio station and the brand. But yeah, let's just stop for a second. And you guys launched, you started, you invited people to text in. But not only that, you guys made a promise to the audience that you were going to respond to every inbound text. So tell us what that was like.
Well, it was a massive learning program. So the first day we launched, I'm going to tell a quick story, then I'll get into the texting thing. So we launched at 1:02 p.m. Like, I don't know why, but I guess it's our free. We're trying to be cool. We had written a full speech. And so the guy that was on the air, his name is Adam. He cracks the mic and he gives this speech. We have TV cameras in the studio. It was like an epic launch. We have billboards everywhere in Edmonton. His mic did not broadcast. We didn't know that at the time. So it was so funny because he came into my office and he was like pale, like going, oh my God, oh my God. And I said, nobody knows but us. Okay. Nobody knows but us. It's okay. And it's actually a miracle. So there was a lot of things that were said online going, 102 seconds of silence. Amazing way to start a little bit busier. And then after a time here, probably about a month, we are getting 4,000 texts a day minimum.
So, like a regular teenager these days, right? So.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, totally, right?
So how do you deal with 4,000 when you promise the audience you're going to respond to those?
You staff it. So I hired 8 people that will respond, and I had to have brand training with them, teach them what the brand is. They never lied and said they were the person on the air. They would say, thanks for, I'm this person. I work here. So great to hear from you. And it is amazing. I was in this will be a thing, a repetitive thing. I was in a pub sitting there having a beer in the afternoon, and 2 guys, real rough, tough guys, were talking, goes, oh my God, the guy texted me back. And of course, my ears perked up right away. And they said, what do you mean? Yeah, this radio station, if you text them, they'll text you back. And he goes, no way. So the guy texts him, our radio station, and thank God we texted back. And they turned in from the roughest, toughest guys to absolute fan guys, just like going, oh my God, I'm talking to the guy on the radio. Are you kidding me? So that was really where I went, okay, this is worth every penny. Because I hate sending out texts and people not responding. I hate it. So, right. And when you got a friend, you talk to your friend, so that's the way it went.
So Mark, obviously you're seeing the text build on a daily basis.
Just said, if you don't make this work, we're going to be doing features, liners, remotes on locations. We're going to have a revenue stream, and so we were a number, I don't know the numbers off the hop, but in the first book, I think we were number 6 and we were ecstatic. And then 3 months later, we were number 2. And then after that, we were number 1. And, at that point, so within 9 months, I was just bouncing off the walls to a point that our radio station, I think our highest share was about an 18 share, and second place was an 8 share. So
wow.
It wasn't even
at 1.2, it was out of 36, and we get 4 releases a year. Out of 36 releases, the station was number 1 for 34 of them. And the times that it wasn't number 1, it had slipped to number 2. But yeah, great track record. But I'm going to be the interviewer for just 1 second. Going back to when you launched, it was really interesting the way you had all of the talent doing shows well before you ever hit the air.
Yeah. So, I had all the talent hired about 8 weeks before launch. And we started testing over Christmas, honestly, for 6 weeks. And they would have to go into a studio, and we would learn the formula of how to join a conversation, what a conversation is, and context, drama, all the things that, we worked on. They were doing it in a vacuum because they would have no engagement from the listeners, obviously, because we're testing. So we would use family and friends.
People out of the big markets doing big shows for big money, you tend to find diamonds in the rough. And what's most remarkable to me is you've been on the air now for about 12 years. And the daytime lineup is still the same. Everyone in the market has tried to hire your people, and they won't leave. So tell us about how important the talent is, why they love it so much. And obviously, kudos to you because, you've done a great job. You identified diamonds in the rough, and they've blossomed and are so loyal to you and the radio station and the audience. It's incredible.
You know what? And they're all really good at what they do. I honestly believe that if you take good care of people, treat them properly, and give them a platform to blossom, it really, you just sit back and kind of watch it, but also be highly supportive. I'm very paternal. I like to know everything about every one of my staff. I know, their parents' names. I know their kids' names. I want to know all that stuff. I get involved. I care. And I think that, and they care too. They know everything about me. I'm an open book. And so a lot of our time that's spending with these is we're just jamming. We're just talking about what's going on in the world, what we're seeing every day, and how can we bring this to the radio in a fun way and entertaining way, appropriately. So I think, why would you leave? It's a great environment. Edmonton's a good town to live in if you have never been there. And a lot of these people are all from the province. A couple aren't, but an interesting story. I'll tell you a real quick story again. Here I go, Ken. Sorry. I had a woman come into the radio station, and we were saying, you can join us live to do the takeover, which is basically a request show, to make it simple. It's a little bit different. I can get into that later. But she was going to co-host the show. So he came in at 9 o'clock in the morning because we just said, come into the radio station. It's open audition. Somebody's hitting the air at noon today with Adam, who's on the screen there. And so she came in and she brought a lemon cake and she fed us all cake. And I went, she does understand radio, people. She comes from a very religious background and was leaving the Mormon faith. And so this was on her bucket list to see if she could get on the radio. So we put her on with Adam. She was not good at all. But she went online on her social medias and shared the story of, this was on my bucket list. I finally got to do this. And she shared pictures of Now TV, which is our cameras in the studio, and audio. She did all this at home and built it all by herself and put it on social media. I phoned her the next day and I hired her.
That's really kind of like a Steve Brown story. So when most stations try to limit talk, so obviously you guys now already encourage it heavily. So tell me a little bit, or tell us and the listeners a little bit, like about how your claim Join the Conversation came together. Like,
what was that question again? I'm just thinking.
When most stations try to limit talk and we don't, I'll just jump in for a second. I mean, Join the Conversation.
How did you find that claim, right?
Mark can speak to where it came from, but it's what we do. And as Mark mentioned a few minutes ago, we don't typically do contests or features, and we have a limited inventory, so that allows us the room to have the conversations. But it's more than just having a conversation. The conversations have to be interesting, and as Mark mentioned, he hires interesting people. So the conversations have to be interesting. And here's what I've learned from my time with the format is that the key is getting stories from your listeners, stories that have some kind of drama or conflict. And so, how we work with our talent, especially at our new conversation stations. For example, I could ask you, while they were there, the day they were coming back, they got tested and they all had COVID. So they all had to stay for another 5 days, and isolate. That was the Hawaiian government. And because the Canadian government said 10 days, they had to stay in Hawaii for 10 more days. So that kind of sounds cool, but it wasn't, because they were kicked out of their hotel. They had to find a place to stay. They found an Airbnb nowhere near the water. And of course, they weren't really allowed to come out anyway. But while this was going on, this host, Kristen, got a call from the police in Vancouver that her car had been totaled. It was parked on the street and somebody smashed into it, not funny, and hit it and totaled it. So now there is a vacation disaster. I know she turned that into several conversations.
Oh, yeah.
So, going back to Join the Conversation, Mark can talk to how that originated, but that's sort of the essence of we want stories on the air.
Yeah. And you know what? What's very important is we make the listener the star. Mm-hmm. We let them tell the story. We leave on a laugh. We don't try and top them. We're never rude. We're always nice to them. I typically find a lot of radio stations, it's all about me. And here's what I did today all the time. He says, I don't. I ask a question and then I listen. I ask a question, then I listen, and then I let it evolve and be organic from that point. And I went, yeah. And that's cool. Like if you're hosting a house party and if you had 28 people over there and you were the only person talking in the house party, you get out of my house, you obnoxious person. So instead, lead a conversation, ask people questions, get everybody involved, give them a drink. That's how you're gracious. And I think that's the attitude we have with our listeners. And, and they have that same attitude with us. To a point now, my morning show can't go out in public because they get mobbed. And that's not in radio. Yeah. And they go to a restaurant and people want to come over and hand their baby to them and get a picture taken or buy them a drink or buy their meal, and it's I've never seen that in my radio career. I know every radio person, we have some stars, obviously, but I mean, through that whole staff list that was on the previous slide, that all of these people are recognized because we market them as well. But they're also live on Now TV all the time. So when you're listening to the radio station online, you can look at them talk into and lots of radio stations are doing that. But we are one of the first. And I think that has really helped raise and we're approachable. I think that's really important. We're very approachable. If you walk up to us, I give my hosts, I'm not kidding, $200 a month to buy things for the listeners. So if somebody comes up, if you're struggling at the till buying your groceries, going, we got it.
Really are everywhere. It could be something in the news. It could be something that, and more likely that happened to that host, happened locally. I was going through my news feed this morning, and every day for the past week, there's been a story on Tom Brady and Giselle, career or marriage. And so there's a great conversation right there. Has your career ever derailed your relationship, or the other way around? And there's drama. There's going to be drama in the stories that come back.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we're chatting with Ross Winters and Mark Hunter, a couple of the masterminds, as you can tell, behind 102.3 Now Radio in Edmonton, Canada. If you have a question for them, put it in the chat box. They'll answer your questions in just a couple of minutes. Obviously, there's lots to talk about here, and we can go on for hours about Now Radio, but we're going to try and be done by 45 after the hour. I want to talk a bit about Now's music policy. And I took this I took this right off your, I'll paraphrase what was on your website and how you describe what you do, because, I think it'd be interesting to those watching. Now says it plays the biggest artists like Dua Lipa, Harry Styles, Imagine Dragons, even monster hits from the 80s and 90s. But there'll be lots of wow. They're playing that moments too. That's because the hosts are free to play anything they like. I mean, what could go wrong? So expect a lot of surprises from Johnny Cash to Notorious B.I.G. They'll also
a plan on purpose, right? Remember I said earlier, what do radio stations do? I'm not doing that. And this honestly started from a campfire. I was sitting outside with a bunch of people. We had a big Bluetooth speaker plugged in, and I was being a goofball. And I said, okay, let's have a game here. Let's everybody take one turn, hook up to the Bluetooth speaker, and you have to play the first song on your iPhone. And so one of my buddies is a big burly guy. And he goes, I'll go first. And so he goes first, and he played ABBA, Dancing Queen. There's no way he should be listening to that song in our radio minds, right? And then he made a joke. He said, my sister must have been on my phone. I went, no. So that's kind of what it is. And I think, if it's done properly in context, and I mean that, we'll come out, we have a produced piece that says time for a Now Wow. The host has to come on the radio and say, I'm going to be playing this song because of this. There's a reason to be playing. It's not just to be radical and weird, but there's context there. So we set it up.
Are they really free? Sorry for interrupting, Mark. Are they really 100% free, or you have like a pool of songs that you choose from?
They have over 20,000 songs to pick from in their library, and we can source them all.
That's fantastic. It's kind of like going back to the roots of radio, where the DJ was basically allowed to play whatever he wanted, and then make the hit. Okay.
Yeah, the only songs they're not allowed to play are songs with F-bombs in them. But
that's
they can edit them.
Yeah, and they do. They edit on the fly. They'll just turn the song off for a split second into production on the air that says, we'll play anything. Try us. I dare you. And people will come up with the most ridiculous songs you've ever heard. And we play them, but we have context. We say, listener Andy asked for this song because this was his dad's favorite song growing up, and it makes him cry every time he hears it.
Some public stations do that here too, but just for a day. Like they have like a specific day where people can, like also in context that say like, even if it's a CHR, they might do something from the 80s, but they have like a specific day. I think it's an interesting concept. Maybe I can go along and then like wish a German song like every other day. So I'll text you.
Yeah.
So basically, you refer to your community as the Now Radio family, right? So that's the name. So tell us why you picked that term. Like,
it's the environment I want to be. Like I mentioned, being in a kitchen party, right? You have your friends and your family over, and you can pick your friends, you can't pick your family, but in this case, we get to they pick us. And we create, that's a great slide right there. So we just made that. And that was we have a garage sale. Like, who does garage sales? We do, So we have an outdoor garage sale. We get thousands of people walking through it. We have 60 tables, and they're all by the Now family. So they volunteer, they bring all the goods, and all we do is work the room, walk around, take pictures, and have fun with them. And it's 4 hours.
You build a great community there. Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating.
Being that outsider, when you walk in, there's everybody, and you're late to the conference, and everybody's talking, and you don't know what's going on. So I said, we got to be gracious hosts. We got to introduce and welcome people as soon as they come in, because I think that's very important. And yeah, and the environment is that it's safe, it's fun, and the stories they tell us, oh my God, they shouldn't be saying any of those things out loud. And they're telling us their most deepest and darkest secrets, and they have no problem with us talking about it on the radio. Go ahead, Ross. Sorry.
I was just going to say, we said earlier that the format, we don't really do promotions, but we do now family get-togethers, and I think, Mark, there's some really good ones, and one you should talk about because it's seasonal almost right now, and it's like nobody has ever in my career done anything like this, and it took a lot of passion and a lot of guts from your staff. But the haunted house, let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so I had to go to, it was the brainchild of the midday guy, and he came to me with it, and I went, oh yeah, I never say no to ideas. I like to always say yes. And so I went to the general manager and I said, hey, so would you mind if we just turned the radio station into a haunted house? And he goes, well, what part? I said, well, the whole thing. We have a 2-floor radio station. Ken's been there. So it took us 2 weeks to build a haunted house, all insane. So all the hosts volunteered, dressed up, we're scaring people, we're running around. I had professional makeup artists done, so we had zombies walking around. And, there were a little bit of costs involved, but it was a free event. And it got bigger and bigger. And now we're in a garage that's huge, like 10,000 square feet. And we fill that thing up. And it's just
Very elaborate. Scared the crap out of me.
yeah, I did. Yeah. But, we love Halloween. It's fun. So.
Wow. Well, guys, we're going to take a few questions in a few minutes. So for those watching, if you have anything you want to ask Mark or Ross, enter it now in the chat box. Man, there's so much to talk about. We could go on here for hours, and we will, because we're going to let everybody know right now we invited you guys back next month on October 13th for part 2 of this conversation because, again, there's just so much to talk about. I think just to tease that a little bit of a few things that I know we don't have time to get to today, but we want to talk more about promotions. We want to talk about your expansion in Canada. You've now put radio on in 3 other markets. There's a company that's mimicking what they think you're doing. And
no, like every overnight success is hard work and long time try and error. So I'm really interested to hear some of his failures to paint your guys a little bit more, to humanize you guys a little bit more.
Yeah, I can talk about that for hours because, oh boy, we made this thing. Yeah.
So we have a request from somebody viewing today that would like you to tell the story about the elderly lady's garage sale.
Oh, you know what? I was reading that and I didn't know what he was talking about, but I got it now. So this was a couple of weeks ago. Thanks, Alan, for the poke there. A couple of weeks ago, maybe 3, my midday guy got a text from a 15-year-old girl, and she said, my next door neighbor had a garage sale yesterday. It was 35 degrees Celsius, smoking hot day here. And she said, and nobody came. Like, I felt so bad for this old lady. So do you think we could do something for her? And so my midday guy, Adam, read that story. So we had a now family member phone in and say, no, I said, let's give her $100. And the guy said, I'll go deliver it to her. We shouldn't, and maybe I'll go buy a lamp. I'll buy a really bad lamp and I'll just give her $100 for a $2 lamp, right? Make her day. So he was driving to the radio station. So for the next hour, Adam is saying he's on his way to the radio station. He's going to be pulling in any time here now. Oh, he's here right now. Another now family member drove in. They've never met each other. And he says, is your name Matt? And he goes, yep. Here's another $100. I'll just buy something. And we recorded it. It was all live. It wasn't recorded, sorry, live on the radio on a speakerphone. So the iPhone right to us in the control room. Adam could talk to the woman and Matt. So after a while, she said, this is a scam, isn't it? This is a scam. And we had to convince her it wasn't. And so we ended up giving her $300. And then we find out that she needed the money because of health issues. And that's why she was doing it. She was selling stuff so she could eat. And it was just like, wow, we don't know any of those things. But it started with a 15-year-old girl sending us a text. And then the midday guy running down the street, giving out money. And I mean, Edmonton's a big town to drive across. Took us 40 minutes to get there. And and that's stay in your car moments. You know what that is, right? When you get home, and I was seriously sitting in my garage. I couldn't get out. I had to listen to this happen and unfold. And I had goosebumps.
So there's
an incredible story.
A follow-up comment from Alan that says most stations would have ignored that request. If we mention that, we'll hear about every garage sale in Lost Dog for the next year.
Yeah.
But clearly, I mean, you guys saw that as an opportunity, and it became something really special.
Yeah, I think that's more in it. You know, opportunity sounds like we're trying to take advantage of in my head, right? So I don't think that way. I'm just thinking, why can't we help somebody? What's so wrong with just helping somebody? You know, and through all COVID and all the bad things, and you know, all the angry people out there, we're not going to be that. We're going to be good people.
Yeah, that's great.
I think
guys,
thanks for helping us raise $150,000. And I go, well, no, that's not the point. The point is we're just the go-between. You know, we're the conduit. That's the word I use all the time. So this person needs help. Send money to us. We'll help him. Okay, we'll get it to them. We'll take care of that for you. Thank you. Right? And that shows the heart.
Mark and Ross, thank you for today. Thank you for part one. I think you restore faith for all watching today in radio and the potential of what can be done and how it can remain relevant and continue to deliver and win in a really significant way in a world where all we hear about now is streaming and playing music. You've restored the faith for sure. So thank you for that. Again, we're looking forward to having everyone back on October 13th. When we get into a lot more, because again, we can go on for the rest of the year about this, but we'll do it in one more session and also take all your questions next time as well. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good luck with your plumbing.